recently, a Black Lives Matter former Facebook account holder, I don't know how closely he is connected with them, but he was collecting a lot of money on their behalf as part of a 501c3 organization called Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta. This individual, who goes by the name of Page, Maejor Page, was arrested for moving around, let's say, using $450,000 of those funds for his personal use. He's been indicted now out of a court out of the Northern District of Ohio. And so we got to take a look at this story. And I've got a lot of problem with people who get out there and start grifting off of important causes. As you may know, I'm somebody who supports criminal justice reform vehemently. Got a whole law firm about it. The reason I started this show, Watching the Watchers, is to sort of educate and bring to other people, expand an audience and communicate with people who also think that our society needs some accountability, some transparency, and some serious reform. And so when you start to see individuals who are sort of, riding on the coattails of these movements and then grifting off hundreds of thousands of dollars off the top of it is inappropriate. And I call out both sides on this. If you recall, I went hard after a couple individuals who were representing Kyle Rittenhouse. Remember that? They were raising a ton of money, all of their credit, all of their, a lot of problems they had as it related to their personal finances and their law firm's finances. And we hit them pretty hard about that because it was inappropriate. Kyle Rittenhouse needed competent representation, and they grifted a ton of money off of him. Who knows where the heck that went? Same thing's happening here. BLM, in theory, but I don't know what it's evolved to. I don't even really know what it's about these days, anymore because of this type of stuff. It feels very, I would say, decentralized to the point where it's hard to sort of identify what their mission is or what real change they would want to see in society. And it's because of this type of stuff that I think is going on, that they just cannot sort of come up with a unified, cohesive theme about how they can be impactful in this country. So let's dig into this story. This is from thedailycaller.com. It says a federal grand jury in Cleveland, Ohio charged Maejor Page, whose real name is Tyree Conyers Page, with 3 counts of money laundering and 1 count of wire fraud, according to the DOJ press release. Indictment set forth by the government alleged that he created a 501c3 Facebook account titled Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta. He allegedly used the account to defraud individuals of more than $450,000 after the tax-exempt status was revoked by the IRS, according to a press release that we can see here. The U.S. Attorney Office from the Northern District of Ohio released this today, Friday, March 12th, says, oh no, that was last week. Friday, March 12th said, Toledo man charged with using BLM of Greater Atlanta Facebook page to defraud donors. $450,000 after the tax-exempt status as a charity with the IRS was revoked. From the U.S. Acting Attorney Bridget M. Brennan, she says, quote, these allegations involve fraudulent misrepresentations that the donations received would support Black Lives Matter in Atlanta, Georgia, when, as stated in the indictment, those funds were actually used by the defendant for personal expenses he incurred in Toledo and elsewhere. So he didn't even live in Atlanta, said acting U.S. Attorney Brennan. It is our sincere hope that these charges help raise awareness about online scams and efforts by some to exploit the name and purpose of nonprofit organizations for personal gain. Page is accused of using unprecedented tensions and uncertainty due to widespread civil unrest and global pandemic to fill his own bank account, said the FBI special agent. Page allegedly purchased homes, traveled, and spent other people's money to buy luxury items for himself, all on the backs of hardworking people believing they were donating to a worthy cause. The FBI will continue efforts to root out fraudsters who victimize our fellow citizens for personal gain. The indictment states that from in or around May 2020, which is right around the time Floyd died, as we recall, May 25th, to on or about September 25th, the defendant devised a scheme to defraud donors, allegedly devised a scheme to defraud donors by falsely representing that donations to his 501c3 organization would be used to combat racial and social injustices, when in truth, the organization was no longer an established charity. He was using the donations for his personal benefit. We're going to go through the indictment here in a little bit, and let's go ahead and do that. It is alleged that the defendant failed to notify Facebook of the revocation. So he started a 501c3 on Facebook. Then they revoked his status as a 501c3 with the IRS, but he still collected money, didn't update Facebook and say that, no, it's no longer a nonprofit. To create the false pretense that BLM-GA was a legitimate social organization, the defendant routinely made posts on the public Facebook page about social and racial issues, including those in Georgia. In addition to falsely representing itself as a legitimate nonprofit organization, the defendant is accused of using the handle to privately communicate with other Facebook users and falsely represented that donations would be used to fight for George Floyd and the movement. As a result, over 100 people donated through its Facebook page. It's alleged that the defendant used a substantial portion of the funds to buy personal items, including entertainment, hotel rooms, clothing, and firearms. He's accused of using the largest sum to purchase a property and the adjoining vacant lot on Glenwood Avenue in Toledo, Ohio. Property was used as a personal residence, says the indictment. All right, so the indictment, as we know, is just a charge. It's not evidence of guilt. Got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. In all cases, all right, so here it is. This is the indictment. This was filed on March 11th to Sir Maejor Page, case number 321 CR 157, indictment, Northern District of Ohio, the Western Division. So let's go through this. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I just want to give you a kind of flesh out the outline here. At all times relevant to this document, on or about February 18, 2016, defendant created Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta. So he's had this kicking around for a while, and the George Floyd stuff was only in May, and it looks like, yeah, there it is. Okay. On or around March 2016, he registered a 501c3 called BLM of Greater Atlanta. So he actually did form a 501c3, which is interesting. On or about August 8th, 2017, IRS approved it. Based on the information, Facebook allowed him to appear on the platform. Then from May 2020 till September 25th, he defrauded donors out of more than $450,000 by false pretenses. BLMGA was no longer an established charity, and the defendant was actually using the donations for his personal benefit. To create a false pretense, he went on to the Facebook page, posted breaking news, video surveillance surfaces of officers beating up George Floyd, who was unarmed and handcuffed, justice for George Floyd. So he was grifting off of this horrific tragedy. On or about June 8th, defendant posted on BLM-GA, says that reaffirms that we are doing what is required of us. Even while protests are taking place all over the country as a direct response to police brutality, Philly officers haven't gotten the message. This chokehold has been banned by almost all police departments in the nation. These officers display no compassion, no empathy, and on and on and on. Same thing, June 18th, justice for Ahmaud Arbery. We talked about that case as well. On or about June 25th, he said, BLM, we live in a country where people feel some type of way about the three-letter word BLM, but feel comfortable with the three-letter word KKK. Let that marinate on your brain. All right, well, I don't know what country he's living in, but all right. We got on or about August 17, 2020. He posted on the public Facebook page, "Hi, everyone. We've been blown away by the millions that are coming together to demand justice for Floyd, Taylor, Tony McDade, and countless others who've had their lives taken months after Floyd have passed since Floyd's death. Ignited a global movement. We're still fighting. Don't give up. Keep saying their names." September 24th, we are committed to finding justice for Breonna Taylor. We covered her in depth. And let's take a look at what's going on with the funds. So in addition to public postings, he used the handle to communicate with other users privately. Those communications required transmissions via wire from the defendant's phone or electronic device through in the Northern District of Ohio to Facebook in California, which is crossing state lines. In those private messages, he expressly represented falsely that the, quote, donations would be used to fight for George Floyd and the movement, as detailed below. So here it is. He's got sort of a conversation back and forth with these people. On June 3rd, he was communicating with people named KK, AD, and AT. Says all funds will be used to fight for George Floyd. To AT, he says, we will be using funds to fight for justice for George Floyd. Then on June 4th, he says to IH, you can send donations, they just aren't tax exempt. Funds will be used to help protest in other needed markets. 629 says it's not personal, it's for the movement. 629 says, again to KK, just to clear things up, funds have been used for personal items, all movement related. Okay, so now he's sort of admitting that there may be some personal use of the funds. Okay, based on the foregoing false pretenses and promises, over 100 people donated through its Facebook page, including IH, who donated 26 on the same day, that he falsely represented to her in a message that funds will be used to help protests in other needed markets. So let's take a look at the money now. On or about the dates listed below, the defendant, for the purpose of executing and attempting to execute the foreign scheme or artifice to defraud, transmitted in writing and caused these different transfers to happen. June 17, 2020, $36,400. Whew, that's a lot of money. July 3rd, $323,000. $323,000. July 20th, another $47,000. August 4th, another $30,000. August 19th, another $22,000. So that is a lot of money that's getting racked up here. The use of the frauds, let's see where this money went. So we've got about $450,000 that is added up. If you add all of that together, where does it go? Use of fraud proceeds. Used a substantial portion of those funds that were donated for private and public pretenses, including entertainment, personal items, hotel rooms, clothing, firearms, real property for personal use, and at least one occasion to pay a prostitute. Oh my gosh. That is not justice for George Floyd right there. On or about the dates listed below, defendant used these funds at various businesses and entities in the Northern District of Ohio, Western Division, and Georgia for the purpose of purchasing personal items. We've got a vacant lot on Glenwood Avenue. We've got property of a single wire transfer, $108,000. He attempted to conceal the purchase of the real property by titling the property to High Frequency Ohio and requested that the seller's realtor enter into a non-disclosure agreement, thereby preventing the seller from disclosing the defendant as the true buyer and disclosing that he used BLMGA funds. Oh, gosh. All right, so where did it go? Here's the money. We've got July 8th, $316 to the Pyramid Lounge. I'm going to guess that was the prostitute at that time. We've got, he went to Apple. So he went to Apple, went to Best Buy, went to the Hyatt, stayed there for $600. Got some nice stuff at Apple and Best Buy. It looks like about $900 at the Apple store, $1,300, which is pretty light for the Apple store. I mean, really getting out of there for under $1,000 is kind of a steal. He's got July 20th, $1,300 out of Best Buy. Couple shops in Dillard, about $2,000 over at Dillard. Went to a cash withdrawal at the Renaissance Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. We've got another ATM withdrawal, a couple of those. $11,000 worth of furniture in Toledo, Ohio. We've got another $1,000 for furniture. Almost $3,000 for a Home Depot. Once you get that furniture, you need to sort of get some tools and stuff to put it all together, I guess. You got Walmart, about $3,500, a lot more than that, a lot of money. So maybe $10,000 at Walmart, another $700 at Towers Armory. So now he's buying guns, $700 for that. Comes back on September 8th, drops another $2,200. So he's getting some good stuff over there for that. All right. Here are the different counts, factual allegations as set forth. Between these dates, he was devising a scheme or artifice to defraud. We've got that. Executing or attempting to execute the scheme through his writings and posting on the Facebook accounts. Count 2, money laundering. Count 1 was wire fraud. Count 2 is money laundering. Factual allegation says he involved in a wire transfer of the $108,000 from the account to the title for payment as real property. So count 2 is all about the money laundering. So he's actually manipulating the money, throwing it into a false title, and then making them sign non-disclosure agreements about it. And he's all doing that through wire transfers of $108,000. Count 3, another money laundering. What's this one for? Monetary transaction. So same thing, $10,000, $108,000. So it's a different account, it looks like. Count 4, another money laundering, $10,000, so $11,000 from a different account. Wire fraud. Forfeiture. They want to seize all of that. So defendant herein shall forfeit to the U.S. all property, real and personal, which constitutes anything derived from the traceable commission of the offense. So they're going to take $263,000, seize that from his bank account. They're also going to seize the real property. That's all going into the government's coffers now. So that's where $450,000 worth of that BLM money went. Let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Support us on locals.com and come and ask a question. This is where they show up right here on this next slide. Let's take a look. From Woodworking Medic says, with all that money gone, will he have to pay restitution? And with that money crossing state lines, doesn't it raise the charges? Yeah, well, he's already in federal court. And so that's sort of what takes it into that jurisdiction. So that was out of the federal district court out of Ohio. So he's being prosecuted in federal court, which is the appropriate jurisdiction. And so, they're gonna impose upon him federal penalties. And at some point, he's probably going to have a restitution bill at the end of the case that he's going to have to work off. Is he ever going to be able to pay that back? Probably, but it might take a long time. And so restitution, we typically tell people don't rely on that. Not sure that you're going to get it, but it is something where they can, go and garnish wages and stay after you until you pay it. But, somebody who's sort of in this position, if he's going to be in prison for a couple of years, then are you going to get any of that money back? But the court will order him to pay restitution, I would imagine. Sharon Quidney says, as far as I know, BLM is a communist organization with the agenda of taking down the country through disruptive tactics. Each group is an independent entity like an individual cell, but they all use race and gender as the motivating force instead of the classic Marxist class struggle. That's a very interesting synopsis there, Sharon. And I think that is a good observation. I really, it's as good as any explanation that I have found. I have actually tried to figure out what they want in this country or what they want to do with it. And I wanted to know what kind of answer do they want when they say, do Black Lives Matter? What does that mean? I still don't have a good definition of it. Because they don't really tell you. They just say yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And if it's a Marxist class organization struggle, then no, I don't support that. If it is a movement to reform our justice system, I can get behind that. But it's been very difficult to pin down what they want, what they're talking about, and it might be because of this, because they are so scattered in sort of a cell-like function. And it's been one of those things. It's been actually disappointing to me as a criminal defense attorney. And I've brought this up many times. I've said after George Floyd happened, the country was clamoring for justice reform. Then BLM formed. Then buildings started getting burned down. And then the defund the police movement started. And then the rest of the country said, this is insane. We don't want any part of this anymore. And now you're seeing it even out of Ted Wheeler in Portland saying, no, we're going to bring back the police. Even in Minneapolis, they defunded $8 million. Then funded $6.5 million of it right back because it's a broken ideology. It doesn't work. Defund the police is an asinine position to take. And so the country was unified in moving towards some sort of semblance of justice reform until this organization got off the ground. And now I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. I mean, from their perspective, I still want criminal justice reform. I still want some real solutions to take place in this country. And I've articulated them ad nauseum on this channel about qualified immunity, ending police unions, and a whole slew of other remedies. But I don't know what they want to do. Apparently, people just want to donate to them to do something. And I'm going to guess that there's a lot more than just $450,000 that are sitting in other people's coffers, not doing anything to provide justice for anybody. We've got News Now Wyoming says, I didn't see stacks of bricks being bought. What the heck? Yeah, those were weird, right? When you would just go to these protests and there's just bricks. Somebody just drops a pallet of bricks on the corner. What? Nobody's investigating that? Where did that come from? All right, we got Farmer's Daughter says, shouldn't that money go back to the donors? Yeah, it should. Yeah, I mean, it should. So the government's going to seize it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. And I don't know if they're going to pay restitution or they're just going to hang on to it. But yeah, I mean, it should, right? It should go back to them. We got Osak says, hey, Rob, big fan. I'm a big fan of you, Osak71. So if you were losing a trial case, would you pull the jury nullification card to swing the jury your way to win your case? So you can't really do that. It's not permissible to go into court and say something like, hey, by the way, you don't have to follow any of the rules in this trial. If you don't like the law, then you can just vote no. Just vote not guilty, right? That would be a humongous problem. Okay, they have to follow the law. That's why they've been impaneled onto the jury. Now, you can sort of, I don't even want to go down that road, right? You're not even supposed to sort of hint at those things in a trial. Ultimately, sometimes you'll be looking for jurors that will have that effect on the jury panel. So let's say you're doing a drug case, a drug trial, where somebody's being prosecuted for possession of prescription drugs. Right, somebody who was taking, I don't know, Xanax or something like that, and they're on trial, and you have the possibility of selecting a jury panel, and you could have a bunch of middle-aged moms with children who are scared to death of their children having drugs, and they think that drugs are the worst thing in the world, and they think that anybody who's even near them should be prosecuted and imprisoned for life. Do you want them on the panel? No. Instead, maybe you want a college student who looks like maybe they are involved with marijuana culture. Maybe they also like to experiment with drugs. Maybe they get on the jury and they look at this case and they go, what, are you whacked? You're going to prosecute this person for Xanax? I've got like 20 of those in my backpack at home. What are you nuts? Right? That is a jury nullification juror. But as a defense lawyer, you can't come out there and say something like, hey, this is a stupid drug case. These laws shouldn't even exist. And that's why we ask you to just find him not guilty. Yeah, under the law, he's technically guilty. We're not going to make arguments about the law. We're just going to say this law is stupid and you should just throw it out. You would have a huge problem with that. So you can't do that in court, and for good reason, right? You don't want that to happen. But if you happen to have that juror on there who thinks that drug crimes are stupid and they're very persuasive in their communication with other jurors, that's not my fault. That's just good jury selection, isn't it? All right. So